Well, joining us now from Washington is MJ Lee, Assistant Editor of the Financial Services for Politico. MJ, good morning.
Good morning.
So how often can we play the game of kick the can down the road? It seems like that's what's happening now. The Republicans could have put up a fight. Why do you think they didn't?
I think today, whether or not this bill passes through the House is going to be a testament to whether House Speaker John Boehner and GOP leadership were really able to convince some of their colleagues that this is their new game plan, and this is in fact the best game plan that they have right now. As you know, up until very recently, House Republicans were adamant that, any raise in the debt ceiling has to be matched by spending cuts, and in a recent sort of turn of events, they're now saying, it doesn't matter that the spending cuts are not there. For now, we're going to raise the debt ceiling for a couple of months and then, really focus on, as you mentioned, putting out a budget and making sure that we're dealing with the spending cuts and the sequester that is coming up in a couple of months.
Yeah, there's a lot of things coming up. Randall Pinkston mentioned a key component of this GOP proposal that Senate Democrats pass a budget which they have not done for a number of years, since 2009. Do you think this can happen? Can they do it?
Well, there's one thing I can say. Paul Ryan is the name that we're going to be hearing over and over again in the next couple of months. As you know, he is the chairman of the House Budget Committee, and he's the congressman that has been sort of tasked with, along with a couple of other members of Congress, of course, with coming up with a House Republican budget plan that can really make it through the House. And the deadline to do this is April. So we don't know what is going to happen on the Senate side. We don't know if the plan that Ryan puts out on the House side will actually go anywhere in the long term. But for now, this is the tactic that House Republican leadership is using. They're saying we're going to raise the debt ceiling for now. This is a small concession that we're making, but it's just a little thing that we're giving up for the bigger goal and the long-term goal, which is to deal with the budget and the deficit.
And so the president said that he would not oppose this proposal, but he would prefer, like many people, to have something more permanent. They've kind of bought themselves 3 more months. Do you think that anything can happen in those 3 months that will lead to a permanent solution?
I think that in the 3 months that we have, if the bill does pass today, something does need to happen. We have a lot of deadlines, as I mentioned before, coming up. The sequester is the big one that we're facing. If Congress does not act, then we really don't know what's going to happen with the fiscal situation of this country. And here's another interesting, definitely worth noting about this bill that's very interesting. Built into this bill is a condition that if members of Congress are not able to come up with a budget by the April deadline, then they're not going to be paid. Now, this is a little bit different from a pay cut, and we shouldn't, mistaken one for the other, because they're very different, of course. But for example, if House members are not able to put out a budget by the April deadline, the lawmakers in the lower chamber are not going to be paid. Their paychecks will essentially go into a holding account, and they will not see that money until their colleagues and they're able to put out a budget, as they're promising to do if they do pass this House bill today. I think that it's safe to say that some members of Congress will not be so affected by, missing a couple of paychecks. Right. I think on the other side of that, a couple of members of Congress, I'm sure, will be very affected by that and not happy to not see their paychecks for their families.
Indeed, hit them where it hurts. As you mentioned, it's anticipated that this proposal will pass. But if it doesn't, what is the worst case scenario? What can we expect would happen? Would government employees start working for free? Unemployment checks no longer go out?
I think it's definitely worth noting that House Republicans do seem very confident that this is going to pass. This idea sort of came up in this retreat they had recently in Williamsburg, and the fact that they put out this House bill for a floor vote so quickly seems to signal that they are very confident. So I, for one, would be very surprised if the bill doesn't pass. And if it doesn't, and I think that it will, if it doesn't, then we do have a little more time until the debt ceiling has to be raised, until we come close to, what people refer to as the country defaulting. But I think that that is a very unlikely scenario at this point.
All right. Well, MJ Lee, Assistant Editor of Financial Services for Politico, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.